Αναγνωρισμένος συγγραφέας στον τομέα του Δικαίου των Πολιτιστικών Αγαθών, ο Αλεξάντερ Χέρμαν, Διευθυντής του Ινστιτούτου Τέχνης και Δικαίου, μοιράζεται την άποψή του για το θέμα της επανένωσης των γλυπτών του Παρθενώνα. Στο βιβλίο του «Η διαμάχη για τα μάρμαρα του Παρθενώνα», που κυκλοφόρησε το 2023, ξετυλίγει όλες τις πτυχές της πιο φημισμένης διαμάχης πολιτιστικής κληρονομιάς, όπως την ονομάζει. Σύμφωνα με τον Χέρμαν, τα μάρμαρα του Παρθενώνα που φυλάσσονται στο Βρετανικό Μουσείο για πάνω από 2 αιώνες δεν είναι απλώς αντικείμενα, αλλά αναπόσπαστα στοιχεία ενός μνημείου που εξακολουθεί να στέκεται στην Αθήνα. Για την Ελλάδα, η αφαίρεσή τους κατέστρεψε την αφήγηση του ίδιου του Παρθενώνα, ενός έργου που σχεδιάστηκε ως αρμονικό σύνολο. Για το Βρετανικό Μουσείο, το επιχείρημα επικεντρώθηκε στην καθολική πρόσβαση και τη διατήρηση. Ο Χέρμαν εξετάζει όχι μόνο τις νομικές αξιώσεις, αλλά και τις ηθικές και πολιτιστικές προεκτάσεις. Αναρωτιέται τι σημαίνει να επανενώσεις ένα πολιτιστικό αριστούργημα στον τόπο προέλευσής του και πώς περιηγούμαστε στην κληρονομιά των αναπηγειακών αποκτήσεων σε μια εποχή που διαθέτει όλο και μεγαλύτερη συνείδηση των ιστορικών αδικιών. Ο Χέρμαν επισημαίνει πιθανές λύσεις, παρατηρώντας ότι αλλάζει ο τρόπος με τον οποίο τα μουσεία αντιμετωπίζουν την ιδιοκτησία έργων τέχνης, υιοθετώντας περισσότερο συμπράξεις και συνεργασίες. Ταυτόχρονα υπερασπίζεται τον ρόλο της τέχνης στο να καταφέρνει να ενώνει τους λαούς, αλλά και να γεφυρώνει ιστορικούς διχασμούς. There's a discussion about George Osborne and his plans for the British Museum and his ambitions for a huge £1 billion renovation. How this discussion fits into the sculpture discussion?
Well, we have to remember that the British Museum is a very old and very large institution. It's the oldest public national museum in the world. It was founded over 250 years ago. So as a result, it's very difficult to steer it in a new direction. I think that's what George Osborne is trying to do. Also, the new director, Nicholas Cullinan, is trying to do the same thing, but it takes a little bit of time. The new approach to dealing with countries of origin for some of the collection objects, like Greece in relation to the Parthenon sculptures, is going to be a part of that new direction. But as I said, it takes time to steer a big ship in a new direction.
He also has in mind a shift towards the African or the South American civilization and somehow, get rid of some of the European artifacts and give a new direction to the museum.
I don't know if I have enough insight to give you an idea of what they're exactly trying to do in that respect. I would be surprised if they want to remove items permanently from the collection in order just to make space. I do think that they are going to have to reorientate the entire structure of the museum. It means that they're going to have to make, as you indicate, more of a focus on African, some of the Asian collections. Many of those pieces are in storage at present, and possibly a little bit less display of the Greek and Roman antiquities, which right now take up a large part of the museum.
Taking into account that the British Act forbids the British Museum to dispose any of their holdings, what formula could be agreed to send the marbles to the Athens Museum?
Well, the Prime Minister of the UK, Keir Starmer, has said that he would not change the British Museum Act 1963, but that he wouldn't stand in the way of a deal that was struck between the British Museum and the Greeks when it comes to the Parthenon sculptures. So I think that's probably the contours that we would have to operate within. And I think that there would have to be creative solutions that take that into account. So there might have to be some kind of compromise when it comes to the actual outcome of that agreement, but it will have to fit, for now at least, within the contours of that piece of British legislation.
And the question of ownership, how can this be solved?
Frankly, it would be difficult to provide a transfer of ownership, which would be what we would call a deaccession or disposal of the objects in a collection without changing the legislation. So there would have to be some kind of middle ground solution. I know that might not be too pleasing to some of your audience in Greece, but that's probably the situation at present. It might be different in 10 years, it might be different in 20 years, but at present, I think that's the political reality that we operate within.
Has the British public opinion shifted towards that direction? Why did major publications such as The Times has endorsed the return?
Well, I think over the last 10 years or so, there's been a fairly consistent view from the British public. So it's usually a majority of people that support returning the Parthenon sculptures to Greece. But popularity is not the only thing. I think there are other issues at play, including the legal point that we made earlier. So there's more that has to be taken into account rather than just what the public might want in relation to this.
The fact that Turkey publicly rejected the claim that Lord Ergin had received permission from Ottoman authorities to remove antiquities from the Parthenon plays any role?
Well, I published a book last year where I spent a lot of time looking into the question of permission, the legal question of permission, and I came to certain legal conclusions. I don't believe that the recent statement from the Turkish representative would change the outcome of those conclusions. What it might do is actually improve relations between Greece and Turkey. So that could actually be of benefit that goes well beyond the Parthenon sculptures. But I'm not sure if it actually changes the conclusions around the legal points.
What is your conclusion on the legal point?
Well, I looked at a number of documents, not just the 1801 letter from Constantinople, but a number of other documents. And I found that on balance, it does appear that there was legal permission. There was an export decree from the Sultan in 1811, and there were some other documents found by researchers in the archives. Now, that might not be the outcome we would want, but I think that's just what the facts state on the ground, and we have to deal with that accordingly. Now, there might be a stronger moral claim, which I think is where this claim is situated rather than really a legal claim, but that needs to be more of an ethical discussion rather than a strictly legal one.
Are you optimistic as the Economist article on a possible return during 2025?
I'm not sure if I'm that optimistic. I still think there needs to be a closer meeting of the minds between the two sides. I haven't yet seen evidence of that, so I think we'd have to see. So I'm maybe a little bit less optimistic, but I think most reasonable people want to see this dispute resolved, and it means that there would have to be some kind of better partnership between Greece and the British Museum. So that's my hope for the future, but maybe I'm a little less optimistic than The Economist.
Alexander, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you very much.